and welcome to the Northwest Treatment Vidcast.
Hello, how is everybody doing out there in the internet world?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
So today we're actually going to talk about being on camera all the time.
Yes, which we are doing right now.
It feels very meta in a way.
It does. We wanted to address how by now just about everybody is used to either with work or with school doing some kind of video platform, whether it's the Zoom or the Google or many other options out there.
And not just that, we were also going to talk about being on camera out in public now with people recording things on their phones and
Correct.
a lot of things that we've been seeing on the internet.
Yeah. So both as a more of a generational thing and also as a current COVID thing. So why don't we look at COVID first? So with everything going on, a lot of people very quickly shifted to doing work meetings, important events, birthday parties, all through videos and a live video cast of some kind. So it's one of those things where that has now blended and almost destroyed that work-life balance. You've had to set up a studio in your home or your bedroom, and that makes it really hard to have that boundary.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like work-life balance was always a little bit harder for those of us that are in the mental health profession or helping professions.
And the US is also not the greatest with that anyway.
That's very true. And now that my office is at home, where it's actually in the spare bedroom, so I'm not in the same situation as you, Jessica, which is actually very thankful of that. But there is always this ambient light on. Like there's always something to be done with work. And generally speaking, my camera is always on because I'm talking to people.
Right. It's hard to feel like you can turn it off. It's very hard for me to take even half an hour for lunch if I don't take my cell phone with me to the kitchen and answer emails while I'm making food. Like there's a lot of pros with this, and being able to do that on your own time, to be able to handle something very quickly, getting used to the platform, being lucky enough to have a video capacity, to being able to have, a system online to hold our documentation and everything. But it's still a stretch.
It is. And the other thing that also has come up recently for us is my computer wasn't intended to be a video computer day in, day out. And we've actually had issues with the electronics because of that.
Right. And then for like the first 2 months of what was going on, so April and May, you couldn't find any additional webcams for sale at all. And there's definitely been price gouging. And so some people had a camera already in their laptop or some didn't. And so it's kind of one of those things that the technology is different and has changed.
For sure. And so I think that now with having the cameras on for work all the time, which is exhausting in and of itself, because how I have to be on camera is very different than how I am in person.
Right.
I can hear your tone of voice kind of, and I can see your body expression kind of.
Right.
So there's a lot more of this like having to intentionally think about how I look, how I'm talking, what my facial expression is. It has definitely happened before where I hide the camera or I hide my screen behind something else and I forget I'm on camera.
Right. We've definitely had to professionally come up with rules for our individual sessions and group sessions, such as, you mute and or leave the camera, wherever it is, like your cell phone, in the room you're recording if you have to go get a food or go use the restroom.
Yes, don't take me to the bathroom. I don't need to see your bathroom. It's okay.
Right. And make sure that you have some privacy, especially if you're going to talk about mental health concerns, and it's also exhausting. Like you mentioned that we're using a different part of our brain because we normally have a lot of those nonverbal, communications. And when you're in person, you have more body language. It's not two-dimensional or less. And it's exhausting. And there's a lot of articles out that you can look for if you're interested for more data about like what they're calling, I think, Zoom exhaustion. And it's scary, and then what about people who don't have that technology? What about families that don't have and aren't able to pay for either laptops or cell phones or internet? And if the libraries, which used to be a really great source, were closed for a while, that's also dangerous and kind of scary, because then you don't have access to data. And there's a lot of talk now that internet needs to be considered like power or water as an essential access and utility.
So as a great example, when we were having the tech issues, I ended up having to have my husband come up here and do the IT thing, and we had to up our internet and be able to figure out how to hardwire the computers in and make sure that our power wasn't, make sure the internet wasn't going to be cut in and out, because it's really difficult when you're in with a client or when we're trying to record to have the internet cut in and out.
Right. It's really hard to have some of those heart-to-heart conversations with the therapist if your internet starts freaking out, and sometimes we just have to have some self-compassion, and breathe through that moment and let it kind of reset and keep going.
Yeah. The other thing that's been interesting for me is I'm of the generation who got a cell phone, right? Like, I'm the generation that adopted. I think you're in that generation too. We weren't born into it, but my children were born into it.
Right. It's different.
It was a big deal when I was getting filmed when I was a little girl, because it was like, Dad brought out the camcorder, as opposed to now where like I can stealthily bring out my cell phone and I can film my children playing. There are so many videos of my kids already,
right,
that it's kind of interesting to know now that we have no privacy.
Right. It is interesting. There's both as a parent, which you are, and I'm not, but a lot of my friends are. And I've had this conversation with many people kind of from a mental health and who are we as privacy goes. Do you take a lot of photos and videos, but don't post them so they're family only? If you share a digital video or photo, you might have to be very explicit if you're okay or not with having a grandparent post it on the internet. I have a friend of mine who takes photos of their child, but never posts a photo of their face. So it's always like off of them in the distance or from the back, and it's whatever makes them comfortable. And that's inside our home, let alone the filming that can happen outside our home with, the red light cameras or security cameras, or now, like you mentioned, cell phones have such great video capacity and they're subtle. I think I was mentioning it to you the other day, Leah, how I play Pokemon Go on my phone.
Yeah.
And there's even if your phone is muted completely, it will make a noise in the Pokemon app if you take a photo, because it was created and is based primarily in Asian countries. And there's a lot of them that have a rule that says if you're taking a photo, it has to make a noise. And, there's something to be said about that.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think is something we need to remind of, and we're being shown this a lot as of late, is that it can be both good and bad. But those arguments you used to have with other people that were private-ish, right? Like they were in public, but they were private because nobody really was going to bring out like the camcorder and record them. We are now seeing those things.
Right.
We are now being actually held accountable for what we say in quote unquote private areas.
Right.
So for instance, like those folks that have gotten fired from their jobs because they were saying racist things and they went viral, they're now being held accountable. So that private sphere that we thought we had isn't as very private anymore. Like you need to be, my husband is very fond of reminding me, like, assume you're on camera 100% of the time.
Yeah. As soon as you leave the house, just be prepared. And it can get a little paranoia or fear-based.
It can.
But if we think about it more in terms of who do I want to be, and then living up to that and being accountable to that, who am I? I'm not just going to think these things. I'm going to speak these things and do these things and be a better person in my surroundings.
To be honest, it's kind of how I parent in many ways, especially when I'm getting super irritated with my kids. I actually think about having another person there or a camera being on me. And the reason is, if I know somebody is standing next to me when I'm trying to reprimand my child or trying to discipline my child, I'm a lot likelier to use my positive skills.
Right.
As opposed to I'm exhausted, please stop doing whatever you're doing and I'm going to scream at you until you stop, which, let's be honest, doesn't work. Just gets everybody super frustrated at that point. And so it's interesting to be able to have it. And at least like for me, it's not a paranoia thing, but at this point, it's just kind of become my default. I just assume I'm on camera all the time, or that I have, my little devil and angel on your shoulders is another way I like to think of it, or just sitting there and always filming you.
Right. And if we think about it more as a positive, how can I use this? It becomes a nice positive skill.
For sure it does. Times are changing, aren't they?
That's true.
And so with that, we wish you to be well and to be healthy.
See you guys next time.
Bye.